In 1970, a US military rocket carrying radioactive material veered 400 miles off course and crashed in the one place on Earth locals called the Zone of Silence. When the recovery team arrived, their radios went dead. Their compasses spun. And the man leading the operation? Wernher von Braun, the scientist who put America on the moon. What he found there would remain classified for decades. But in 2015, a geophysicist named Arturo Carrillo published something that changed everything. Today, we are opening 4 case files on places where Earth's laws break, where magnetism bends reality, where the sky leaks electricity, where life survives without the sun. These aren't legends, they're geological scars, and the evidence is forensic. Let me tell you about a rocket that went rogue. In 1970, the United States Air Force launched an Athena rocket from Green River, Utah. The payload was sensitive, radioactive cobalt-57 used for medical research. The destination was White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico, roughly 400 miles to the south. This was a routine test flight. The trajectory had been calculated down to the meter, but the rocket never arrived. Instead, it veered wildly off course, traveling hundreds of miles beyond its target, and crashed in a remote, desolate patch of the Chihuahuan Desert in northern Mexico. The cause was mechanical. The 4th stage motor ignited prematurely, firing before the mid-course guidance system could correct its path. The early ignition gave the rocket an unplanned range extension of roughly 400 nautical miles, sending it deep into Mexican territory. But here's where the story gets strange. The rocket didn't crash in just any random stretch of desert. It crashed in a place locals had been whispering about for decades, La Zona del Silencio, the Zone of Silence. When the recovery team was dispatched to retrieve the wreckage, they packed their standard equipment: radios, compasses, GPS units, the works. And as they approached the crash site, something unsettling happened. Their radios began cutting out. Their compasses wavered, struggling to lock onto magnetic north. The US military brought in a full recovery operation. They airlifted the radioactive debris and, curiously, removed tons of contaminated soil, replacing it with fresh earth from the United States. The operation was led by none other than Wernher von Braun, the legendary rocket scientist. To the locals watching from nearby villages, the massive, secretive operation looked like something else entirely, a cover-up. And the legend of the Zone of Silence exploded. And for 50 years, that's where the story ended. A crashed rocket, a magnetic desert, a Cold War cover-up. Case closed. Except it wasn't. The mystique actually began decades earlier. In the 1930s, pilot Francisco Sarabia reported that his flight instruments went wild while flying over the region. But it was the 1970 rocket crash that put the zone on the global map. In the decades following, Mexican researchers from the University of Mexico and independent geologists conducted extensive studies. Early theories leaned heavily into the paranormal. Locals reported strange lights, alleged UFO sightings, and even encounters with 3 tall, blonde-haired strangers who spoke perfect Spanish, asked only for water, and then vanished without leaving footprints. Soil analysis revealed the truth. Massive magnetite deposits and meteorite debris, 3 major impacts in the 20th century alone, including the massive Allende meteorite in 1969. The zone sits atop a Cretaceous seabed, rich in magnetic minerals. The result? Localized pockets of electromagnetic interference that shift like invisible landmines across the desert. The combination creates shifting pockets of electromagnetic interference, invisible landmines that move across the desert depending on where the magnetic material concentrates. When visitors report that their compasses work fine in one spot but spin erratically 50 feet away, they're experiencing these moving patches of interference. A 2015 study by geophysicist Arturo Carrillo confirmed that the zone's magnetic field strength is significantly higher than surrounding areas in certain spots. creating interference with radio frequencies, particularly in the VHF and UHF bands. But here's the critical detail. Scientists working at the Mapimi Biosphere Reserve, which encompasses the zone, report that their radios and compasses function normally during daily operations. The effect is real, but it's not universal. It's patchy, localized, and dependent on where you're standing. The zone of silence sits on the 27th parallel north, the same latitude as the Bermuda Triangle and the pyramids of Giza. Coincidence? Probably. But what's not coincidence is that this region sits near the edge of the North American tectonic plate, where ancient seabeds rich in magnetic minerals create localized anomalies. The rocket didn't crash there because of magnetism. It crashed there because of a mechanical failure. But the fact that a malfunctioning rocket carrying radioactive material landed in a place already famous for compass anomalies and strange lights, that's what created the perfect storm for legend. The massive recovery operation, the radioactive payload, the involvement of Wernher von Braun, it all looked like a government cover-up. And in the absence of clear answers, the locals filled in the gaps with UFOs, mutations, and mysterious strangers. But here's what still puzzles researchers: the biological anomalies. The Mapimi Biosphere Reserve is home to over 200 species of birds, 36 species of reptiles, and the endangered Bolson tortoise, one of the largest tortoise species in North America. Visitors report seeing purple cacti, unusually large plants, and tortoises with strange shell patterns. Scientists explain these as extreme adaptations to the harsh desert environment, not mutations. The purple cacti are stress responses to intense UV radiation. The tortoise's shell patterns are natural variations within the species. But the concentration of biodiversity here is genuinely unusual for such an arid region. And then there are the persistent reports of animal behavior. Locals claim that during certain times, often coinciding with meteor showers or geomagnetic storms, domestic animals like dogs and pigs exhibit intense distress, howling or squealing uncontrollably. Some researchers theorize that animals sensitive to magnetic fields may be reacting to fluctuations in the local electromagnetic environment, but no conclusive studies have been completed. The zone of silence is a place where mechanical failure, geological coincidence, and human imagination collided. The rocket crash was real. The magnetic anomalies are real. But the legend? That's what happens when science meets secrecy in the middle of the desert. In the early 1980s, residents of a small valley in central Norway started reporting something impossible. Glowing orbs of light were appearing in the sky, sometimes hovering for hours, sometimes darting across the valley at impossible speeds. They weren't planes, they weren't helicopters, they were silent, luminous, and utterly unexplainable. The sightings peaked between 1981 and 1984, with reports coming in up to 20 times per week. Entire families would stand outside and watch these lights dance across the valley. Photographers captured them on film, and in 1983, a group of scientists decided to investigate. They set up Project Hessdalen, led by Norwegian physicist Erling Strand and Italian astrophysicist Massimo Teodorani. The team installed permanent monitoring equipment, cameras, radar, spectrometers, and magnetometers. The goal was simple: document the phenomenon and figure out what was causing it. For 2 years, scientists recorded everything, and what they found was impossible to dismiss. The lights were real, measurable, and behaving like nothing in the physics textbooks. For 20 years, scientists had no explanation. The lights just existed, defying every model, every theory. The breakthrough came in 2004, when geologists studying the valley discovered something remarkable about its structure. The valley is essentially a geological sandwich. On one side, the bedrock is rich in copper. On the other side, it's rich in zinc. And running through the middle, connecting the two, is a river with high concentrations of sulfuric acid. The valley is a giant natural battery. The chemical composition creates an electrochemical reaction. Electrons flow between the copper and zinc deposits, using the sulfuric river as a conductor. And when the charge builds up enough, it discharges into the atmosphere as cold plasma, ionized gas that glows when energized. A 2014 study published in the Journal of Atmospheric and Solar Terrestrial Physics by Teodorani confirmed that the lights exhibit characteristics of dusty plasma, where microscopic particles become electrically charged and cluster together, creating luminous formations. The battery theory explains the glow. It explains the energy. But here's what still keeps scientists awake at night. The lights seem to respond to stimuli. Observers have reported that shining a flashlight at the orbs causes them to change direction or intensity. Some have described the lights as following them as they move through the valley. In 2023, researchers from the University of Oslo installed AI-powered tracking systems to analyze the light's movement patterns. Preliminary data suggests the orbs may be reacting to changes in the local electromagnetic field caused by human activity, but the mechanism remains unclear. The behavior is what makes Hessdalen Valley a true forbidden zone, a place where the answers only lead to deeper questions. In 1986, workers in southeastern Romania were drilling test holes for a geothermal power plant. They were looking for pockets of heat beneath the surface, hoping to tap into underground thermal energy. What they found instead was something far stranger. Their drill bit broke through a thick layer of clay and dropped into a void. They had discovered a cave. The clay layer that sealed it was ancient. Geologists later determined it had been airtight for 5.5 million years. When the first team descended into the cave, led by Romanian scientist Cristian Lascu, they immediately realized something was wrong. The air was thick, almost suffocating. Chemical analysis revealed why. The atmosphere inside was toxic. Hydrogen sulfide at 1 to 2%, methane, carbon dioxide levels 100 times higher than surface air, and oxygen at just 10%. Half of what humans need to survive comfortably. By every rule of biology, this place should have been sterile, a dead zone. Instead, it was teeming with life. Lascu stood at the edge of that underground lake, breathing toxic air through a respirator, staring at creatures that shouldn't exist. And he realized, we've been looking for alien life in the wrong place. Lascu and his team spent years cataloging the cave's inhabitants. They found 48 species living inside. 33 of them had never been seen before. They exist nowhere else on Earth. There were spiders, scorpions, centipedes, leeches, water scorpions, all of them pale, eyeless, adapted to total darkness. But the most remarkable discovery was what they were eating. These creatures didn't rely on plants or organic matter from the surface. They fed on a floating mat of bacteria that covered the cave's underground lake. Those bacteria survived on chemosynthesis, extracting energy from hydrogen sulfide and other sulfur compounds seeping from the cave walls, similar to organisms found near deep-sea hydrothermal vents. Movile Cave is a closed-loop ecosystem. It operates on an entirely different energy source than the rest of the planet. While the surface world runs on sunlight, this cave runs on Earth's internal chemistry. A 2010 study published in Science by microbiologist Rich Bowden confirmed that the bacterial mat produces organic compounds that form the base of the entire food web. The cave essentially functions as an independent biosphere. Genetic analysis conducted in 2018 revealed that the species inside have been evolving in isolation for millions of years, developing unique adaptations like elongated limbs, enhanced chemical sensing organs, and extremely slow metabolisms to survive in the nutrient-poor environment. If life can thrive in Movile Cave, sealed off from the sun for millions of years, then life can survive a global extinction event. But here's what researchers still don't understand. How did the original organisms get inside before the cave was sealed?
And more intriguingly, a 2021 study detected trace amounts of methane-producing archaea that share genetic similarities with microbes found in Martian meteorites. The implications are staggering. Movile Cave may be a blueprint for alien life, a model for how organisms could survive in the subsurface oceans of Europa or the methane lakes of Titan. But here's what keeps biologists up at night. In 2022, researchers detected faint bioluminescence in some of the cave's organisms, creatures that have never seen light, producing light. Why? For what purpose in eternal darkness? No one knows.
The cave was discovered by accident, a drill bit breaking through clay. Just like the zone of silence was discovered by a malfunctioning rocket, which means there could be dozens, hundreds of sealed ecosystems beneath our feet running on alien chemistry, and we'd never know.
"50,000 years ago, a meteorite slammed into the Deccan Plateau in western India. The impact was catastrophic, carving out a crater nearly a mile wide and 500 feet deep. But what makes Lonar Crater unique is what it hit. Most meteorite craters form in sedimentary rock, soft, layered stone that's easy to punch through. Lonar Crater formed in basalt, a dense volcanic rock. There's only one other confirmed basalt impact crater on Earth.
Inside the crater, a lake formed, and that lake has always been strange. It has two distinct layers that do not mix. The top layer is relatively neutral, like a normal pond. The bottom layer is highly alkaline, pH 11, and saline, more like seawater than freshwater. For thousands of years, the lake was a murky blue-green, home to algae and microbes adapted to its unusual chemistry.
Then, in June 2020, something happened. Overnight, the entire lake turned bright pink.
Scientists from India's Geological Survey and the Agarkar Research Institute identified the cause almost immediately. The culprit was Haloarchaea, a type of salt-loving microbe that thrives in extreme alkaline environments. When conditions are right, high salinity, high pH, warm temperatures, Haloarchaea blooms in massive numbers, releasing pink and red pigments, carotenoids, as a byproduct of its metabolism. But identifying the organism didn't answer the real question: why did it bloom in 2020? Early theories pointed to reduced water levels due to drought and increased evaporation during India's summer, concentrating the salinity. But Lonar Lake had experienced droughts before without turning pink.
A 2021 study published in Environmental Microbiology revealed that the bloom was triggered by a combination of factors: reduced rainfall, increased temperature, and a sudden drop in human activity due to COVID-19 lockdowns, which reduced pollution runoff into the lake.
But some researchers point to the crater's magnetic field. Lonar Crater has long been known for magnetic anomalies. Compasses don't work properly near the rim. Rocks in the crater contain high concentrations of masculinite, a rare shocked glass formed only under the extreme pressure of meteorite impacts. Masculinite has unusual magnetic properties. A 2022 geomagnetic survey detected fluctuations in the crater's local magnetic field strength, possibly linked to shifts in Earth's broader magnetic field, which has been weakening at an accelerated rate over the past 2 decades. The theory is that geomagnetic fluctuations altered the lake's chemistry just enough to trigger the bloom. The magnetic field may have influenced the distribution of ions in the water, creating the perfect conditions for Haloarchaea to explode in population.
But here's what makes this truly strange. Lonar Lake had experienced droughts before, in 1972, 1987 and 2015, without turning pink. So why 2020?
Some geophysicists point to timing that's hard to ignore. In early 2020, ESA's swarm satellites detected what's called a geomagnetic jerk, a sudden, unpredictable shift in Earth's magnetic field. 3 weeks later, the lake turned pink.
The connection is speculative. No one has proven that magnetic field shifts can trigger microbial blooms, but the timing raises questions that researchers are only beginning to explore. What we do know, the lake returned to its normal color within weeks, and it hasn't turned pink since. Will it happen again? And if it does, will it coincide with another magnetic anomaly? Ongoing monitoring continues.
These 4 locations share something in common. They're all places where Earth's internal systems are exposed, where the planet's hidden machinery, magnetism, chemistry, geology breaks through the surface and reveals itself. The zone of silence shows us how magnetism can bend reality. Hessdalen Valley shows us how chemistry can create light. Movile Cave shows us how life can exist without the sun. Lonar Crater shows us how magnetism can trigger biology. They're forbidden zones because they break the rules we thought were universal. But here's the final piece of evidence. In 2024, geologists mapping Earth's magnetic field discovered something unsettling. The planet's magnetic poles are shifting faster than at any point in recorded history. The North Magnetic Pole is racing towards Siberia at 34 miles per year. And as the field weakens, more forbidden zones are appearing. In 2019, pilots over the South Atlantic reported compass failures. In 2022, GPS systems in Scandinavia began glitching. In 2023, a research station in Antarctica recorded radio silence for 6 hours, no explanation. The forbidden zones aren't anomalies, they're warnings. Earth's magnetic field is changing, and these places are the first to show the cracks. If you've ever stumbled upon a place where reality seemed to glitch, drop a comment below and hit subscribe, because the planet is about to get a lot stranger.